Yes, YouTube is back to working. It let me upload a video today, so I'll get back into it and I'll upload all those things from last week that we missed. All right, so today again we're estimating square roots. So for the two ladies that just came back from the restroom, estimating square roots, okay? So what we talked about last week were all perfect squares, and that's what's on this green sheet that I gave you. All of the perfect squares all the way up to 625. So those are things that we should be familiar with. And remember how I said the first 10 perfect squares we should all kind of have memorized? Okay, and we've gone through those. We've said those out loud last week. But I don't really expect you to have all 25 of these numbers memorized. But that's why I gave you this again as a reference. So what we want to do today is we want to figure out how can we estimate what the square root of 12 equals. Is the square root of 12 on this sheet right now? Now you see a 12, right? You see a 12, but you don't see a square root of 12. Do you see how there's, look at the very top of the paper. What does it say at the very top of your paper? Perfect square equals whole number, right? So what's on the left is your perfect square, and what's on the right is the whole number. So you see a whole number 12, but you don't see a perfect square that's a 12, correct? So this is what I want you to think about right now. Think to yourself, not out loud. I want you to think, looking at the perfect squares, so that's the left-hand column, which two numbers would the 12 come in between? Again, looking at the left-hand column on your green paper, which two perfect squares would the 12 come in between? We're looking at perfect squares. So 3 is not a perfect square. All right, so you said between square root of 9 and the square root of 16. Do you all agree that it would come in between there? Does everyone see what we're talking about right now? So we're all speaking the same language, right? Okay. You could put that, yes. We're putting this in notes, right? We're putting this in notes. Just like what I have. Estimating square roots. Now, to make this a little bit more math appropriate looking, we could say, since it's between these two things, that the square root of 9 is less than the square root of 12. Do you agree with that statement? And we could say the square root of 12 is less than the square root of 16. Okay, so again, we're saying that it's coming in between those two numbers, but we're using some math symbols here, the less than symbol. Now let me ask you this. You're right that it comes in between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16, but which one is it closer to and why? So if you're going to answer this, don't just give me a guess on which one you think it's closer to. I want you to explain your reasoning, why you're choosing that one. Anyone want to take a guess? Is the square root of 12 closer to the square root of 9, or is it closer to the square root of 16? What if I asked you this and I didn't have that square root symbol, the radical sign? What if I didn't have that on there? And I said 9, 12, 16. Is 12 closer to 9 or is 12 closer to 16? Now that one's a little bit more, that's easier to answer, right? So you just explained your reasoning. You said that 12 is 3 away from 9, but it's 4 away from 16. Does everyone see that? All right, so even though there's that radical sign there, remember that radical sign is a square root symbol, it works the same way. So can we all agree that the square root of 12 is a little bit closer to the square root of 9? All right, so let's do this. Okay, so we're showing that it's a little bit closer to that. Now, let me ask you another question. What does the square root of 9 equal again? 3. So it's a little bit more than the square root of 9, but it's not quite 4, right? So it's between 3 and 4. So we're going to say, we're not going to say 3.5. We're going to say a little more than 3. be our answer for what does the square root of 12 equal. The square root of 12 is a little bit more than 3. It seems complicated. Well, it's our first one. Usually does it when we do an example for the first time you've never seen before that seems complicated. And we'll keep practicing. Okay? Practice, practice, practice. This is what we're doing. So we're going to keep practicing until it doesn't seem so uncomfortable to do. All right. So let's do another one. All right? I'd like for you to think about the square root of 80. So again, we're looking at our green sheet. We're looking at the left-hand column. And we're thinking about which two numbers the square root of 80 is going to come in between. Very good. So, all right. So we're already catching on better, right? So let's write that out, similar to the way we wrote the last problem. You okay, Keely? So the square root of 80 is more than 64, but it's less than 81. Now my next question is going to be, which one, the square root of 64 or the square root of 81, which one is it closer to? I heard a lot of people whisper the correct answer. It's closer to the 81. Now, if I asked for the reasoning and the proof, what would be the proof that it's closer to 81? So it's only one away from this. How many is it away from 64? 16. Very good. Okay, so it's only one away. So it's almost 81, isn't it? Now, what does the square root of 81 equal? 9. So it is almost 9, correct? That is what we're going to say. That it is almost 9. Yeah, kind of like a sentence. Now, why do you think that I'm teaching you how to do this? Any idea? Okay. So our goal this week is going to be able to compare real numbers. And we talked about real numbers. Real numbers are rational numbers and irrational numbers. So if I wanted you to be able to compare the square root of 80 to the fraction 3 1/3, you need to be able to have some strategies for doing that. Okay? And we're not allowed to use calculators. If we were allowed to use calculators, then we could just put that into a calculator and get the decimal form of it. But we're not going to be able to use a calculator on CQA, so I'm trying to teach you a strategy for finding about what this equals, an estimate, without using a calculator. And also, we're going to have to be able to put it on a number line. Okay? I know. So if we're able to put it on a number line, then we're going to be able to order it from least to greatest, and also, that would be comparing. All right? So that is the purpose for what we're doing with this. All right, let's try another one. How about the square root of 40? So don't say anything out loud yet. Let everyone think about which two numbers they think it comes in between. All right, and then tell me, what do you think? Oh, man, I made a typo on this, didn't I? All right, so it's between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. Please write that in your notes, though. That's written in that form, okay? Which one is it closer to? It's closer to the 36. It's only 4 away from 36, whereas it's 9 away from the 49. 36 equals what? 6. So we can say that it's a little bit more than 6. Okay? I won't erase it. Is it making more sense now? Good. Let's do the square root of 5. The square root of 5. You try the whole thing on your own. The square root of 5. Square root of 5. So we're thinking about what's going to go into there. And think about, would you say it's a little bit more than blank, or it's almost blank? Instead of almost, we could always say it's a little bit less. It's a little bit more than blank, or it's a little bit less than blank. Which one? All right, so which two perfect squares is this in between? 4 and 9. It's between 4 and 9. Is it closer to 4 or 9? It's closer to the square root of 4. It's only 1 away from the square root of 4. The square root of 4 equals what? 2. So that means it's a little bit more than 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 9 is 3. So we know it's between 2 and 3. Okay, it's between 2 and 3, but it's a little bit closer to the 2.